It's the only way to be sure.
Until the rest of all in a month from now, this Hollywood Big Shot's gonna give you what you want. I'm gonna make him an offer.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Inside Your Screen, and we're talking all things Snowpiercer. I'm joined with Brendan Horgan. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good, Tony. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Before we get into our usual routine of the overview of this week's episode, our answer for everything, we've had a few comments on our YouTube channel. And Brendan, if you'd be ever so kind to read them out, I would be obliged to you, sir.
I will, of course, and I apologise if I brutalise these names, so I apologise in advance. But I think it's Maya Bustanchi says, so good talk about this season. Please continue. We will continue. We've got Chichi Una, who think is talking about your prediction, or well, your thoughts on Wilford last week.
My prediction.
Or what were your thoughts on Wilford, I think, last week.
Yeah.
And Chichi Una says, I also agree Wilford would never have left the train just to grab more security guards. We're with you, definitely. And
yeah, I think that was a bit of a plot hole there. I think they just needed to get him off the train for some reason. I was expecting something more. I wanted something a bit more dramatic than, I have to go check on this. It should have been more like there was something that Wilford had to go and see, you know? And I felt they dropped the ball a little bit on that one.
Exactly. And she also says he would have parked it on the train and hosted a party. That's exactly.
He would have had a party like it was 1999.
That's exactly what he would have done. Right. And the last one is, what's the meaning of life? 8 out of 8 or 8/8. I wrote this on another video about the show. This summed up what I felt about the episode, so this is the summary. My heart shattered in the last scene when Alex, lingering at the window, screamed for her mum. I'm shaken. Wow, got her. Him.
Are you shook? Because I was shook.
Yeah, thank God for Jennifer Connelly and her acting. She really feels like the show. We didn't really need to see the other characters. For me, Melanie carries it all by herself. The flashbacks, though, so interesting and well acted. I would have wanted even more details than the departure scene, but maybe that's coming later. I think the train was real, so this person disagrees with me on the thinking it was in her head. Mel is so intelligent and knows so much about Snowpiercer. I think she wouldn't make such a mistake unless she was extremely compromised. There is a possibility it's not real, but it feels real. This show does them twist all the time. This is quite a long message, but we're nearly there. Wilford has done something on the train, and there's an interview online with Sean Bean and a clip which could be a potential spoiler. Hold on, we're not giving spoilers, but I don't want to know if they are. I think someone has gone into the engine on Snowpiercer, because Ben or Javi would never leave or ignore Mel like that. Or maybe is that the twist? Could they have turned?
Well, it's interesting
the fire
because
under the train was Alex pulling on the brakes on Big Alice. But if Wilford now controls the engine, Snowpiercer, is that enough to stop the train and turn around? Big Alice is 40 cars, Snowpiercer is 994. The trains would be damaged if the engines pulled in different directions. Nevertheless, maybe the best episode of the series yet. So that was What's the Meaning of Life, 8 out of 8. They loved that episode.
What's the meaning of life? You asked some good questions there. I'll be honest, because I liked your interpretation, Brendan, that it could have all just been a dream. But now I'm sort of like, with this week's episode, I'm now thinking, I think it's real as well. And we'll get to that in a bit. But
thank you to everybody who got in contact, and let us know what you thought about this week's episode as well. Just leave in the comments once we've got it up, and remember to like and subscribe and share with all your friends and fans of Snowpiercer. Spread the word.
Now that we've shielded ourselves like a couple of low-grade hookers, let's get into the episode. Brendan, what do you think of this week's episode, Brendan?
Yeah, I really like this week's episode. A lot happened, but I always seem to moan about the flow of the episode, say, it's a bit too quick or a bit too fast-paced. This week was perfect. They gave each kind of subplot its enough time They developed almost all the subplots of the story. There was a twist. There was a couple of twists in this episode. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think confrontation is the name of the game here. Like, many of the main characters are forced to kind of deal with maybe some past experiences that they're coming to bite them in the arse, essentially. We have, obviously, the kind of fallout from the deaths of the Breachmen. Bess is actually doing some detective work.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Solves the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we are sneaking suspicions about Pastor Logan are being answered.
Yeah, I got that totally wrong.
What did you say?
I thought he was a bit of a ruse. I didn't think he was.
Oh, you thought he was a red herring.
I thought he was a red herring. Correct.
No, I always had my suspicions about that pastor. Maybe just because of the actual, you know, pastor, and I'm just naturally suspicious of people in a kind of religious sense. I guess that's what I come from, you know. But that's it. There you go.
For a second, the way you said it, I thought you meant like pasta, as in like the Italian.
I had pasta this evening. I always love pasta. I can say nothing wrong about pasta. I love that pasta.
It's good to know.
Gotta have that pasta. And then you've got on a separate note as well. There's some poignant areas as well where we see Wilford's obsession with total loyalty, and here's a twist. Kevin's still alive.
He's alive.
And I'll be honest, when I first saw that, I was kind of thinking to myself, what's the deal here? Why are we? What's the importance of Kevin? Is he going to be like some kind of, you know, important character later on down the line? But the way it was kind of handled made me think, okay, I can see. But we'll get to that in a bit. We're still dealing with the Breachmen's deaths. And the kind of ongoing rising tension between the tailies and the third class of Snowpiercer. And Wilford's scheming has come to fruition, basically. His kind of behind the scenes dabblings have now paid off, because Snowpiercer's, like in the first series, basically trying to tear itself apart. You could argue that, you know, this metaphor of, like, you know, humans going in this vicious cycle of violence and whatnot is coming to full force again. But yeah, what did you think, Brendan, of those tropes?
Yeah. You went into quite a lot of detail there. But
Did I go deep for you there, Brendan?
Yeah, you went deep. Yeah. It was. The war seems to be
brewing
just around the corner, shall we say.
Well, that's what I was looking for, because like a lot of the last episodes were like the kind of machinations of like putting pieces together. Now I feel like there's payoff now. You know, we're seeing the kind of fruits of Wilford's labors here, with his villainous mustache twirling devious schemes.
Yeah, and they introduced a couple of new characters as well.
There were, yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So Bess basically is doing her detective work. She finds a button on the floor where the Breachmen have died, and it's an old Wilford pin. So she basically gets some information from LJ, and what's the other guy's name?
I don't know, mate. Oz.
Oz, yeah.
Oz.
So Bess goes to Oz. He tells her of this like old lady that deals with antiquities. They take her to the car, and she finds out that one of the first class occupants did a deal with this old lady. Did we get the old lady's name?
No,
I'm just calling her old lady smoking cigarette looking badass.
Yeah.
Let's just call her that for now.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So yeah, Bess comes to the first class, and the first class lady, who we've seen in a few episodes, all she's been doing really is essentially going, don't like anything that's happening here. But her name's Eugene, I believe. Yeah, she essentially gives up Pastor Logan right there and then. There's not really much detective work once they confront her. And yeah.
Does she give up Pastor Logan?
She mentions
Bess works it out.
Well, no, she mentions a quote that he obviously gave to her, and she's fiddling with her St. Christopher medallion.
Yeah, it's the medallion.
Which is...
She doesn't give up the pastor.
Oh, she basically does. Come on. I mean, Bess was given the same medallion by him as well, and she's essentially regurgitating psalms that he said as well. So I think it's kind of said that. Anyway, Bess goes to see him. They have a bit of a fracas, and he's behind. Well, we still don't really know how many people are involved in Wilford's cult. But at the end, this episode shouldn't have been called Our Answer for Everything. It should have been called Democracy, Red Lights at Night. That's what I would have called it. But there you go. There you go. So we also have quite a few here. Like Breachman Bolshevik is obviously reeling after the loss of his comrades in arms. He's the antagonist, really, that starts the fight with the Tailies, that starts the spark of the new revolution happening, I guess, if you will. Pyke is a broken man as well. I love Steve Ogg, and I really loved his character in this one. He's obviously dealing with his murder of Terrence in the only way that he knows how, which is to smoke weed and essentially just become a bit of a I don't know what you want to call it, really. Like, he's just sitting there just drifting away, listening to his music, listening to his jam.
Yeah, he's just trying to escape from it all, I think is what it is. I think Pyke's having a bit of a crisis with dealing with killing Terrence, and it was actually it was decent to see Layton acknowledge it in this episode. There was a line Layton when they kind of meet Pyke and speak to, or Layton speaks to Pyke, but he's with Zara, and he kind of says, I think I've broken him, like, shit, and he kind of is that, damn. So it was good to see Layton kind of acknowledge.
Well, it's good to, and there's another part of this as well where it's good to see that he's accepting some of the decisions that he's made and now coming back to bite him on the arse. And essentially, like where you're saying as well, there was a great scene between those two where, Pyke's was dealing with the trauma and saying, like, I checked the ledger, I did the figures, and I have proven that Skell is actually a little more in Pyke's favor. I counted your debt, you are now marked. I thought that was just a great line. And showing his kind of like descent into possible madness, we don't know. But then later on as well, when Pyke is apprehended by some of the third class and he's taken into the Taily section to be de-armed, and then Layton essentially turns around and goes, hey, you want me, right? He's trying to save Pyke. That's his humanity kind of coming back to him a little bit as well, which I think we needed, because in the last couple of episodes, Layton has been looking a bit like, he's just been making decisions in the kind of power play sort of way, but maybe forgetting the kind of people that he's actually sacrificing. So it was good to see that kind of redemptive arc as well there.
That was a big kind of theme in this episode, really.
Definitely.
And I'm sure we'll go into it a little bit later because Ruth had the same kind of thing. But it was good, just purely based on, excuse me, Layton being the good guy. The last couple of episodes, his decision making wasn't good guy-esque, and we ourselves on this pod called it his actions out. So it was good, exactly like you said, for him to acknowledge that he's been making mistakes, and that was a really cool scene as well. The whole sacrificing of the arm, and that was, Ruth had her moment there as well. But it's good to see Layton coming back, man. Well, I mean, there was a few as you said, there was a few poignant scenes in this episode, and let's talk about Ruth, because that was something that actually surprised me, to be honest with you. So there's a scene where the Tailies are trying to hide away from the third class residents, and Ruth gets stuck in one of the rooms where she sees a child, and she's like, hey, sweetheart, like, what are you doing? And the child is terrified of her. And it becomes apparent that in the first series, Ruth kind of went down to tail end section and de-armed her mother, and you forget that. It's I think it's poignant for me because, like, we've seen how far Ruth has come from the kind of job's worth, doing it for the kind of sake of the train, but also keeping people in this kind of Gestapo sort of like way to like where she is now. And you can see that the look on her face is just,
she's mortified by the fact that she did this thing. She did this barbaric act on this child's mother, essentially. I thought that was a really great scene.
It was brilliant. And they had the scene with her and Roach as well a little bit earlier before that, where she was kind of talking to Roach about, getting the opportunity to board Big Alice, and and she was kind of, and she she said that, I think she says the line, I chose Snowpiercer because I am Snowpiercer, and they just had this kind of close moment there, where it was like, what do I mean to the train? What does the train mean to me? And so on, and so what, the balance of things. And I did like as well, because obviously the whole show is based on real life, and but I love the fact that Roach referred to the tail as the gulag, a complete reference to Russia, the Russian Revolution, the gulags. It was like, that moment
there was I was about to say there's a definite sort of like historic, what happened in history sort of thing now happening here, which I definitely got, and I'm sure the writers were sort of putting that forward as well. But you mentioned Roach, and I want to mention something about Roach, which kind of puts me on edge a little bit. I don't know if you picked up on this, Brendan.
Go on.
So during this episode, we hear Roach's first name being used by Ruth, Sam. And it's done in a kind of like flippant way of like, oh, you only use my name when, something serious is about to happen. But we also see his family.
Yeah.
What does that allude to you, Brendan? That alludes to me that Roach is going to die soon.
Oh, no, I didn't. It wasn't forthcoming.
You don't like, this is like, they've humanized Roach. Like, Roach has been in the background a lot in all the series kind of going on here.
Well, to be fair, we're quite close to the end of the series.
Yeah, but we've known about his wife and his
we've
daughter
only got
since season 1. But why are they suddenly on screen now? Like, why are we suddenly seeing them now?
This was an episode of introducing new characters. There was a character in the tail who was working with the first Australian, or the last Australian. The last Australian.
One of the last 2 Australians,
who we haven't seen before, who was given lines, or who I don't know his name because we didn't get a name off of him.
I think he's just the last Australian. Let's just call him the last.
But I'm talking about the last Australian's mate.
Oh, the lady.
No, there was a new.
The other guy. Yeah.
There was a black guy with a baseball cap.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
New character was given lines. He was the guy who was going with the last Australian. So that's one new character in the tale we never seen before. They introduced the new character in First Class, who again, I don't really recall seeing her specifically in the background. She might have been, so I'll give you that. But she's still a new prominent character. Okay, we've got Roach's wife and daughter, who they didn't really show.
They've never shown. They've alluded to the family before, but this is the first time we've seen them.
Yeah,
and that concerns.
Didn't show much. They showed us for a.
Didn't show much, but it concerns me the fact that we're humanizing Roach a little bit more now. I mean that with, as I said, like Ruth's kind of mention of his first name.
Oh, well, I would agree with you on that point.
I don't think Roach has long left to live.
But that was kind of my point. Is we've actually only got 2 weeks left of the show, because the last week is a double episode.
Ah.
So that's
double trouble.
I think you're right. I think they might have just nailed the first nail in the coffin on Roach, but I think there's going to be a few characters dying before the end of the season.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because as I said, they've started in the last couple, like this episode specifically, introducing brand new characters out of nowhere.
Yeah, but they're kind of tertiary sort of characters, like the old lady, the badass lady with the cigarette, her kind of interpreter or family member or whatever it may be. As you said, like the strong boy had a few more lines in this one. It's always weird that Strong Boy has just been sitting there, and it's like he hasn't really been in this much. So I think he could be one to go as well. There definitely will be a few more deaths before the season is out. But let's get away from that for a second. I want to talk about Wilford a little bit more. I want to talk about Kevin. I want to talk about Wilford's perverse sort of sense of loyalty. So on this episode, we see that Miss Audrey, that he saved when Big Alice kind of went as well, sort of thing. He seems to have this kind of perverse sense of control. And we've talked about this before, about his kind of controlling methods. But this episode, I think, seems to delve a little bit more into the psyche of that, in respect of I think Wilford has this kind of sense of like he saved people, therefore he owns them. And that comes more prevalent today in this episode, when he brings Miss Audrey. He doesn't trust her. There's a bit of a trust issue going there because he knows that she was trying to get to the command box or whatever it is to make Snowpiercer hear whatever he's saying. So he's testing her in the same way that he's locked Alex out as well, because there's another scene in this episode where Alex is basically saying, like, you've pushed me out, and he's like saying, yeah, why do you think that is? Because your mother comes on board for a week and like you're all playing happy families. Well, I saved you. He keeps on referring to the fact that he saved people. Yeah. And he brings Audrey to see Kevin, who's still alive. That it was actually done in a kind of way that I actually believed, because in the other episode where he kind of slit his wrists in the bathtub, you didn't see a body, you didn't see him getting taken away or anything like that. But he's basically broken. He's a broken man. He's in this kind of cart by himself. He's just wailing, and Wilford brings Audrey in to kind of fix him essentially, and she does in a kind of weirdly perverse like the dog whisperer sort of way. She basically boils him down to his core and says that Wilford saved you. You were nothing before Wilford, and now you're here. What did you think about that, Brendan?
Yeah, I thought that was a bit weird. Like, I didn't like Miss Audrey's kind of. Has she sold out, or is she still playing the game? Is she still on the mission? Well, this is the thing.
This is the question, isn't it? I think she's still on mission. I think she's on point.
I hope she's on point, because, I think she probably is. I hope she is anyway. But is she a hypnotist? Is she obviously is some. Well, she obviously can do some kind of hypnosis, but just the concept of like her being able to, from turning someone into complete hysteria into a complete submissive character within
I think that was a bit hours. I think we have to. I think we have to take it with a pinch of salt. Yeah.
If they kind of, if it was different, and Kevin was going to counselling twice a week with Miss Audrey, and he gradually got back to himself, you might believe it. But it's just like the fact that she can just whisper in his ear or hypnotise him or whatever. Even hypnotism to an extent wouldn't. It just.
Well, isn't hypnotism the kind of fact of like the more susceptible of you? Like, I'm not saying, I don't believe I've ever been hypnotized. I'd love to be hypnotized, like say, there's a sort of susceptibility that you have to put yourself under yourself, and I think
and
they could argue that Kevin was,
because there's different types. I'm not talking about like the type you'd see on telly where they make you do silly things. I'm talking about the whole just really, it's almost like meditation and getting really deep into your thoughts and so on and so forth. And I know that there are different types, and I'm but it was just a bit hard to buy into that the process happened so quick. I 100% agree with you, and we discussed this in that episode when we saw Miss Audrey in the bath, and when we first kind of revealed her scars and that she'd done it, that it is exactly that. It's the concept of I've saved you, and you're special. But what I find weird about that is that this is just a mentality point of view where I think it's flawed, is if you've already submitted to this person, so how can you be more submissive? You've killed yourself. Kevin's
well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. He's killed himself essentially, metaphorically, like physically, but now she has programmed him to think that like Wilford is the man, like he's the one that is the leader, and he loves you.
That's my point. He thought that already.
He did, but
which is why Wilford just literally handed him a knife and he killed himself.
Yeah. But there was also a kind of survivors, like he obviously didn't want to do it, but he was just aiming to please him. But
I think it's almost like the final trial of Wilford's kind of.
Yeah, and I think that's what she was trying to convey to him, was the fact that, you know, he loves you. He doesn't just do this for anyone. Like, he's trying to. What she's doing is, like, she's making Kevin feel special, and by doing that, by saying, like, you know, he doesn't just pick anyone to do this to. This is like yeah, as you said, like the final test, and you passed. So now you will do his bidding, like you are his, you know, whatever it is. But you can kind of see now, and let's get on to the kind of final piece as well, like with the red lights when they're going through the corkscrew section. There's a definite shift in balance now, and you can see that Layton was prepared to give up his life or his arm, at least to save Pyke, in his kind of, you know, white knight self-sacrificing kind of way. But ultimately, maybe he's lost the war, because now, as Snowpiercer is going through the corkscrew, we see all these kind of red lanterns, all these red lights, vigils turn up, and you can see there is that shift of power. And it's a great visual as well. That was a great sort of scene to watch. Democracy at its finest, perhaps, but what is democracy on Snowpiercer?
Yeah.
It kind of created a sinister feel as well at the same time as, like, things are going to change.
Yeah,
you know?
The darkness is upon us type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also kind of just knowing that there's only an episode and then a double one left. It's kind of like the shit seriously about to hit the fan very soon.
So yeah, that's it. That's what are your predictions for the next episode, Brendan?
Oh well, there's a couple of things before we get off of this episode. The first thing is Pastor Logan, right? If Pastor Logan is dead, right?
Is he, though?
Then, if he is dead, then...
Because we know the Hayward scientists have got the glue.
Exactly, and Josie went through far worse.
And we haven't seen her for a couple of episodes now.
But she went through far, far worse, okay? Mm-hmm. So if Pastor Logan's dead, then... I'm going to be pissed off with the writing. I'm just going to say that's lazy. So, excuse me. I want Pastor Logan to survive because he's going to have more information about it. I thought some of the visuals in this episode were brilliant. They showed a lot of the outside of the train, and that's the visuals of the train going round the Roach. Is it Loach or Roach? Roach, yeah. Referred to it as something as he kind of met his family, like corkscrew. And it was such a great visual just to see that, because it was the first time, and it was probably the best example of seeing how big the train is.
Yeah, seeing how many actual carriages.
Yeah,
because it was like 1,000 odd carriages, and that's the first actual time. You're right, that you actually see, you know, maybe not all the carriages, but you see
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of carriages in one shot.
Yeah,
and it looked wicked. It looked really nice, and like you said, that kind of, and it was that kind of Pastor Logan reveal that then kind of very quickly went into the lighting of the candles, and it was the Roach scene, wasn't it? That you first kind of, it was like, look, and do we light the candle type thing, and then you're like, you see it, and it's like, wow. Wilford's got an awful lot of support out there. So I really, I just wanted to, before we kind of done predictions, I wanted to just say that if Pastor Logan's dead, that's just really crap writing. And I
don't think he's dead. I think he's going to have to. He will be a pivotal point, I think, and I think the rising tensions between the tailies and the third class, that will be, Bess is going to be the kind of savior in this. She's going to bring Logan to trial or stand or whatever. She's gonna, however it happens, she's gonna get the Hayward gloop onto Pastor Logan so that he can be conscious or whatever, to confess his sins. And I think there will be a kind of very religious confessing of sins type moment. I'm hoping there will be anyway. But also I think as well, like, you know, the whole, there's obviously been a bit of a time jump with the last episode with Melanie being away for a month, and this episode I think we haven't caught up with Melanie coming out. That's why
this picked up, because remember they were investigating They were mopping up the blood, so this picked up where Melanie jumped off the train.
So that's what I mean, like in terms of like the time jump sort of thing. So I think the next episode we'll find out, and this is why I agree. This is why I agree with the YouTube comment that we had earlier, that I think that there is some sabotage going on with the train, because I think Wilford's going to have a very tight iron fist clamp in the next episode. I think he's going to make his move. I think he's actually going to come on board Snowpiercer, and I think he's going to kind of take control. Layton, I think in the next episode is not going to have a good time. That's what I think.
I think you're spot on. I mean, at the very end of the episode, Wilford did say to, I forget who, but it was like, get Icy Bob ready.
Yeah, that was like. So, what do you think Icy Bob's going to be doing in the next episode?
Yeah.
Like, what
So
is he just going to let him loose? He's going to let Frankenstein's monster just loose on the Snowpiercer?
They're heading down train, and exactly like you said, I think this is his power play. He's going to try and take over, and it's the kind of let's see what the remain is, because it was I don't know, did you see more red lights or less? Because it was an awful lot of red lights, but there were big chunks where there wasn't red lights, so it kind of
I think the illusion was that Wilford had more like supporters than Layton, and especially because of the fact that Layton went down to save Pyke, and it was essentially Ruth that saved the day. So I don't know I think that will kind of strengthen Layton's and Ruth's relationship anyway in the future, because like she basically saved his life. So but yeah, no, I do definitely think they were meant to be alluding to the fact that there's a lot more red lights than there are.
So I think Wilford tries to freely just walk through Snowpiercer.
Yeah, he's egotistical as well, so he will just do that.
He's gonna just literally walk through with Icy Bob, and probably will get right up into the engine.
Take the throne.
And do you know what? I think maybe the way this episode's gone, and the fact I think maybe Melanie, I think that my theory could possibly be wrong. I'm veering more towards your theory and the theory of
Wilford takes control of Snowpiercer, and they just
it's kind of that. It's that's
Alex
the kind
tries
of the battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, in fact that's it. I think that's going to be the whole of the next episode, because then we've got the finale, which is 2 episodes. This episode is going to end, with. I think the episode will end with what ended that Melanie episode and that battle, and it will just that's exactly what will happen. The final scene we will see will be from Alex's perspective inside Snowpiercer, screaming at her mum while she is possibly pulling the brakes at the back. Wilford's got the front, and there's probably been a few deaths along the way, with Taylor's trying to stop Wilford and his army. I reckon Icy Bob's taking people out, man. If Icy Bob's going up the train.
I think there'll be a moment where Strong Boy and Icy Bob have their kind of tete-a-tete, so to speak. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the next episode will be Wilford takes control, and it'll be left with Melanie.
Because that will leave the Melanie. Does Melanie get on or off the train, or like get back on the train for the finale? So it's kind of it leaves.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
so
yeah,
as
definitely.
opposed to
Opens it up for series 4, definitely.
Her coming back in the next episode, so now we know she's. But no, I think that will be the final. That'll be it. That's my prediction for the final cut. It will be seeing Alex's perspective of them driving past Melanie while the chaos goes on behind her.
Well, there you go, guys. That's Snowpiercer episode 7, our answer for everything. As mentioned before by Brendan, leave comments, subscribe to us, let us know what you think, and we will bring up your comments in our next episode of Snowpiercer. We hope you've been enjoying this so far, and we've been loving talking about it. Inside your